All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for tuning in as we roll along throughout all the great IA baseball content. As always, make sure to check out all the great things, including we have our 2A pitching staffs and offenses. That's right, Cade and I go through our lists of some of the top pitching staffs and top hitting offenses. Wow, hitting staffs, you can say that. And we go through and we break it down by class. We've already done 4A and 3A. 2A is now on tap, and that's what we're doing now. So a lot of there, plus more great Rockfin content coming on up, including we have our team rankings reveal coming on up very shortly. Plus, we also have a lot of other stuff, a lot of other stuff in the works to go ahead for you to check out. Plus, some old interviews coming out from the vault. That's right, some really cool conversations that we've had, not only on this segment, but beyond. Speaking about this segment, this is our prospect planner piece in which we dive into the pursuit of the college game beyond the field. That's right, what it looks like from a parent's perspective and what it looks like from a player's perspective. How does that bear out? And some really things we've learned along the way from tips, tricks, and more for you to utilize. As we sit right now, we are, moments, it seems, away from practice starting on up for Iowa high school baseball. Now, as you're sitting here, this prospect planner is really going to be about where you stand right now. Right? We're going to talk about some thoughts on where you stand coming into the season, what some of the numbers bear out, when the importance of numbers and the importance and the not so importance of other numbers, right? So kind of putting it all into perspective of where you are right now so you can have that roadmap to hit what the regular season will bring and what the postseason will bring to you. So a lot to check up and a lot of fun to get to. Speaking of fun, we're going to bring in the one and only card room extraordinaire, the one and only Chad Ericson, as he joins us. And Chad, as always, card room on point. Appreciate you coming along for the ride.
Thanks. I don't do too much with the card room except add to it, much to my wife's dismay.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I am all go for it. I am all go for
But
it.
the boys and I love it just fine.
Yeah, you know what? The majority rules, right?
That's
Hey,
right.
I know
That's
the
right.
wife counts for more than half, but hey, we won't do any math here today. We won't.
She's just happy it's contained.
Yes, containment is key. And hey, that's what I should use in my life. Hey, it's contained. It's all right. It's hectic, but it's contained. Well, Chad, thanks again for joining in. Let's go ahead and start right off the bat with this one. Let's get into it. We are what seems like a hop, skip, and a jump away from practice. And, for everyone out there, make sure you can always check back on other episodes we've done on Rockfin, but we're going to re-hit those topics as well. We're going to touch them up because, my goodness, if you haven't caught it before, there's always, every year is so different, Chad. You get players graduate, new players come into the mix. One of the things that I love and hate about high school ball is that it's really kind of a revolving door in a sense. There's always new, there's always something different, and you're always going to be starting from scratch at some point. So I think that has to come into play when you talk about where we are right now. And it's important to look at that because as you try and map out the purpose, and we've said this before, the purpose of each part of the season, right? The purpose of preseason, the purpose of in season, the purpose of postseason. So where are you at? That's the big question we have today. And I think that has to be really examined before you start getting, I guess, too serious. And this goes for everybody. Even if it's not in the cards right now to go collegiate ball, well, this can help you make that determination at the very least here, Chad. I mean, where you kind of stand and how that helps you moving forward.
Right. So we talked about this a little bit earlier on. We're a couple of weeks away from the first time you and I spoke on air about all of this.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of cycling through this again, which I think is important because we have some underclassmen that maybe they're trying to figure out what it is that they would like to do. Maybe there's a possibility of playing college ball for those underclassmen, and I think it's good to put this information out there because you're right. There's always new blood coming into a program, whether it's a high school program, a college program, and the new folks and moms and dads need to know what's what.
Yep.
How does the kid stack up? They were a great travel ball player, etc. But how do they stack up, right? And I think it's important to have some knowledge. And the great thing about the internet, there's good things and bad things.
Oh yeah, it's an even.
Um, yeah, but one of the things that can be done, right? So at this point, um, practices are ramping up. We got first official day of practice. Isn't that Monday? Now we're recording on Friday in April.
Yep.
But is it Monday or Wednesday next week?
Well, I believe it is the. Let me check my schedule here.
Put you on the spot.
Oh yeah, no, I have it in here. I believe it's the Monday. No, it's the Wednesday. Excuse me. It's the first. And
Yep.
with that said, of course, that means only a few weeks because the 13th, which is opening day for high school ball,
Right.
that
Right.
comes very very quickly, and
Yep.
ultimately, I think now is the time where yes, it seems still in the distance, but I mean, you have to get prepared. And Chad, preparation comes in a lot of ways. So say someone's starting to get that interest, get that bug and that itch to go baseball, right?
Yep.
What as they sit right now, say it's kind of a base layer. We haven't done anything yet. We're just getting into this, or we're an eighth grader just getting into the high school scene here, and we haven't touched on it. What are some of the things? Let's go through a couple things anyway. What do we look for first off? As we get here, we're set again. We're ready. You talk about having to get prepared. What you've done in the past is in the past. It helps up to now. But what's the big focus now for those, especially that are just entering the interest of baseball and wanting to pursue this a little further?
Yeah. So if you've got a child who is interested in playing baseball at the next level, and let's say they're um, an incoming freshman, they're an eighth grader right now as we speak, but within a couple of weeks they're going to be an incoming freshman or a freshman becoming a sophomore. Basically, you're underclassmen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that some of them may or may not have done a showcase by now, but there have been a lot of showcases this spring. I know there's a PBR one in Waukee this weekend. They always put a great uh, they always put a great showcase there in Waukee, and it's a great facility that the Sticks have there that PBR uses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that what you're going to get out of a showcase there is you're going to kind of figure out, okay, what's my 60-yard dash? What's my exit velocity? What's my velocity throwing the ball? If I'm a pitcher, you could even get down to spin rates if you're doing a PBR event. Those are measuring sticks that you can use to gauge how you compare with the other kids who are your age and other kids as well at your position, right? Because I think it's important and it's not fair to say, okay, well, I'm a first baseman and I'm 6'2" and 210 pounds, and I run a 7'6" 60-yard dash, or I run a 7'8" 60-yard dash as an eighth grader. Well, I don't think anybody's expecting you to run a 7'1".
Yeah.
Okay, you, that's awesome. You're going to get some attention with that size and that speed. Okay, but as a parent, it's good to go out and just kind of take a look and compare and say, okay, my kid is kind of like this player, and how does my kid stack up?
Yeah.
Um,
Looking at
and
the
let's say you haven't done a showcase yet,
okay, yep, yep.
okay? Um, and you're panicked, like, oh my gosh, I didn't sign up. I should have had my kid. I'm not saying that at all. You don't need to do that, okay? You don't need to do that this early. But I think it's good to know where your kid is and what your kid needs to improve on. And if you're in a program, if you're in a high school program, it's possible that your head coach knows what your kid's 60-yard dash time is, or what your kid's velocity is thrown across the infield or from the outfield or from the mound, and possibly exit velocity off the bat, right?
Yep.
These are some good things to know. This is not, these metrics are not your end all be all. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of guys that can play this game that don't have the metrics, but they can perform. Right.
Yep.
And that's the most important thing, is the performance.
And with those numbers here, Chad, I think looking at that from again from going through this yourself, what have you seen colleges really look at? I know that a lot of coaches also like to just be there. They like to see them. They like to see how they are fluidly in live action and not just from the highlight reels. Like to see
Right.
how they struggle as well as how they succeed. From a number standpoint, if you're looking at it, what are some of those? What are some of the numbers that maybe you should focus on a little bit more now, starting to get into it? That coaches at not just the high school ranks, but the college ranks. What have you noticed that they look at a little bit more so than others?
Um, well, first of all, that's a good question. And I think that's very dependent upon the coach,
Yep.
what's important to the coach. Um, I know that there are coaches who they talk about yeah, that's great that they have 100 exit velocity, but they can't hit. They can't hit in a real game with difficult pitching.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll look at the video or they'll see them live and say, okay, I see the flaws in the swing. Can I correct those things or can't I?
Yeah.
I think the metrics are coach dependent, but I think that the metrics tend to lend a little bit of credence to, okay, this kid throws hard,
Mm-hmm.
or this kid's pop time is great. I want to see what they're doing to get that great pop time. I want to see their arm motion. How are they creating that velocity? Is it all arm, or is there bottom half to the pitching as well? So the metrics can get you part way there, but ultimately you've got to look at two.
Yep.
And so I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think it gets back to what I was saying about performance. Ultimately, you have to perform in game.
Yep. And that's where, excuse me, that's where I kind of wanted to lead into with looking at where you're at. I mean, prospectively, showcases, again, don't have to, but when you look at it, again, we've talked about how you kind of stack up with others, where you sit there. But Chad, is it worth also taking a look to say, man, may not be ready? Is there a level that's not ready for a showcase? I mean, developmentally wise, is there a kind of a bare minimum? I don't know what that may be, but with kids just getting into this, there's a lot that goes through when you're still developing, physically. Is there a way that you go? Is there a point at which you say, hey, let's wait to do showcases, or is
Yep.
it more of a, hey, let's just dive in and see what happens?
I think you can argue both sides of that, where you can say, hey, we really do need to know where we're at.
Yep.
And um, you really find out. when you do a showcase. Now, with that being said, the other side of that coin is let's not show until we're ready to show.
Yeah.
And I think if I had to do it all over again, that's probably what I would have done.
Okay.
We would have probably have done less showcases. We would have maybe done more at the after the sophomore season
Yep.
than what we were doing before in our household. And we've taken that approach with my youngest,
Yep.
where we're going to see how this season goes and then make some determinations as to if it's worthwhile to do a showcase or continue to use those dollars for development and coaching and strength training and all of those things. Um, so I think that's a really good point and a really good question for a lot of folks. And I think this is what I have found myself doing as we've gone through the prospecting phase
Mm-hmm.
leading up to when my oldest got signed, was when we would do a showcase or when I would look at a program, I would really I would look at that team's roster, okay, like a junior college's roster or even a D1 college's roster. All of this information's out there on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be like, okay, here is what is there right now in this program at the position my son wants to play at. And these are the metrics that that player had when they were getting recruited by this program. So you can go back and you can see without a subscription, you're not going to get video of that person unless you have a subscription,
Mm-hmm.
but you should be able to see the metrics of that person on PBR, on Perfect Game, maybe JUCO route, um, and you can kind of see how your kid would stack up.
Yep.
Okay.
Kind of get that.
Now going back to, I'm sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Kind of get that baseline like you were talking about, and I think it's hard to evaluate where you are if you don't know what the base is. And again, from your numbers, and then kind of gauge. I think it can be a good humbling tool too as well. But I'll let you get back to it here. But yeah, I just want to agree with you on that part. I think it's you need to have that base, and you need to
And, and
have
that and that that information is free,
yeah.
right? It's like you can go out. All of this is public information. What kid is on what roster and what college program, and you type the person's name into a Google search, and up pops their profiles in Perfect Game, up pops their profiles in PBR, and you just go looking and say, okay, this is what, for us it was catcher. So, okay, here's the pop time, here's the exit velocity, here's the velocity from behind the plate, here's the foot speed. All of that stuff is out there, and you just say, okay, if we're doing all of these metrics, then we're kind of right where we need to be. And the big question then becomes, okay, how does performance factor into this, right? So just taking one step back quick, because I want to hit on this point.
Yep.
For a younger player, if you haven't done your showcase this spring, don't worry about it. But you should be talking with your coach when you have your tryouts. A lot of times the coaches know the metrics. Get those metrics. And parents, have your kid get the metrics from the coach. Don't reach out to the coach and get the metrics from the coach. Have your kid do it.
Yep.
And then you can do as the parent, you can do their Google research. Your kid doesn't have to do it if they have better things to do. They're in season. But then you can kind of see where your kid stacks up and what your kid needs to work on. Maybe they need to get stronger. Maybe they need to get faster. Maybe they need to work on their throwing technique a little bit. And how, what drills need to happen in order for those things to take place for that child. and then also set goals, right? Like maybe I'm running a 7-4. My son, I think the first showcase that he did, I want to say as a freshman, he ran a 7-4 60-yard dash. It
Mm-hmm.
might have been a 7-3, but let's round it up. A 7-4 60-yard dash. Not slow, but definitely not fast. You
Yeah.
know, and now he's in a range of like 6'9" to 705. Have been kind of where he's been
Yep.
in these last showcases as a senior in high school, and that's above average.
Yeah. That is.
So he stacks up. He stacks up in that area, and I knew that. And so I knew that the showcases and the camps we were going to when he was a senior, he was going to demand attention because I knew that he stacked up to what the college team had on the roster already. I knew that going in.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's up to him to show it when you're at the showcase. Okay. So um, that's to me, that's a good value of those metrics
Yeah.
is to find out, maybe that's a key of when you show is when you stack up,
Yeah.
unless I think there one really probably difference or shouldn't say difference, but one factor that might trump that school of thought is if your kid has a lot of size
Yeah.
or your kid is left-handed. I think that those are some trump cards. If you have a freshman who's 6'3" and throws 82 or 83 miles per hour, well, you're not maybe at a speed where the colleges are oohing and eyeing, but they see that you have a big frame. Things are going to change. Velocity is going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
You're all of a sudden you're projectable,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the trump card. And if you're left-handed and you're big, you're even more projectable because you're more rare.
Yeah. You're in rarefied air once you get to that point, and I think that's again it's just kind of where we're at in baseball society, and certainly lefties bring a lot, but again everything is brought to the table as well. But and again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Prospect Planner, once again brought to you in part by the one and only RDA Financial Network. And hey, check them out whenever you get the chance. And hey, they're always in your community. They always are looking out to how to help you both financially and communally as well. So hey, check them out today at RDA Financial Network online, however you can get a hold of them. Also on social media as well. So check out all those updates that they bring, and certainly it's fun to watch and go through with that. But as we start to wind down here, Chad, again, uh, I love the fact that we're as we sit here again. You don't need to panic. You certainly don't need to go into too much crazy mode. But I think getting a good start, getting those, like Chad said, those base numbers, and kind of getting it. Okay, where are you, and are you at a point where you could compare what you have to others? I think is something and it's not a matter of trying to scare you into trying to get to a certain point. Certainly, your body can only do so much. It can only get so far. So you have to enhance what you have, not try and create something you don't. I think that's something that everyone really should take a look at. But then, as we start to wrap up, Chad, from the standpoint of okay, now preseason, looking at that, I know that a lot of everyone's different at where they sit. Everyone's different at how they're about to approach the season. Ultimately, you should always approach the season in the end with, hey, let's get it done, let's get some games won. And as you sit here looking at, you just got a little bit of time left before practice starts up. Um, what is for those also looking at? I mean, I think it's okay to plan ahead too. You haven't gotten it now, But don't just think, okay, during the season I'm going to plan for it. You get a lot of these teams, even as you have mentioned a couple times, even like club ball, beyond club ball, legion ball, I should say. They're always looking to get players so that they can get teams ready, so that by the time the season ends, they already basically have a roster set. How important is it right now as you start to get towards the season that you look at not just club ball? Maybe club ball isn't it for you. Maybe the travel isn't there. There's other ways to do it, but definitely get your practice in. But make sure you get more than just practice, but some live reps.
Yeah, and I think some of those tryouts have already happened, um, and it sometimes for some teams it starts in the fall,
Yeah,
right, where you're setting a roster. But for a lot of organizations, they're doing tryouts right now, or they're coming up on tryouts
yep.
because they want to know who wants to play. And as soon as the high school season is over, you really go right into the fall. So I think if you have an intent to play in the fall, you need to have your ear to the ground and figure out where you're going to be and what team you're going to try out for if that team has tryouts, or at least be reaching out to the coach to say, hey, when are you having tryouts, or do you have a spot for my son, or what have you. um, so that's happening. I think the other thing that I would have done differently would have been, um, when my oldest was going into his junior season or into his sophomore season, I would have been looking at, okay, where does he want to play, and when is that school's camp?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's in our season, which happens a lot in Iowa, maybe it's not feasible to do it, but what showcases or camps does that school go to so we can get in front of that coach? And you want to, those schedules are starting to pop up now. Okay. And sometime in some cases, it'll show when the school's camp was the previous year. So at least you know what month you're looking at, because a lot of times the schools are going to keep the same schedule. It's just going to fall on different dates,
So looking at
right?
like fall and into spring, now is the time to look at some of those colleges and
Yep.
even some other even like JUCO all the way up to D1 have that, and they're animals of repetition. And so
Yes. And you'll see things in June and July in regard to camps for these schools.
yep,
And it's hard for Iowa kids when it's, if you're looking out of state, because those camps are happening because those schools are in recruit mode and we're in the middle of our season. So I'm not suggesting that players need to miss out on baseball games to go to these camps, but you need to at least be aware of them,
mm-hmm,
um, and just kind of use the information to figure out, okay, where are the schools going that I want to be in front of,
yep,
and make it a point to know, because what I found was, we were kind of playing catch up there because I wasn't looking soon enough to see when the dates of these things were happening, and we couldn't game plan for it effectively. So we were playing catch up after our season got over, and we probably missed a couple of opportunities that we could have done. I think my son's very pleased with where he's going to be next year, and so it worked out. But I
yep,
think we could have done more than we did if we had had a little more ear to the ground, looking at those schools and when the specific school camps fall and when JUCO route camps fall, because we were doing a lot of, and I've said this before, we were doing a lot of PBR stuff, and my suggestion is diversify.
yep. Hey, I like that. having more options is always good. And again, ladies and gentlemen, make sure to check out all that and more. Again, all the options that you have available. The more the merrier, especially the younger you are. Start broad, narrow as you go through. It kind of is the way of baseball life. But Chad, wrapping up here, time dwindling down as we kind of say sayonara and sign off here. We'll have more. We'll have more content coming on up with this. We'll expand upon this conversation later and further on. So we'll kind of take you through as we go through and as we go through each week, each month. Where are we looking at and what we picked up along the way? So as always, don't forget to make this to hit this up on YouTube, on Rockfin, and let us know any thoughts. What have you seen and what you wish you would have done differently? So all kinds of good things to catch up there. But as for now, Chad, I think a lot of good stuff to start, but we have a whole lot more to get in front of and a whole lot to touch up on. So ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. There's a whole lot more conversation as we go throughout. And again, this is our Prospect Planner piece brought to you by RDA Financial with myself, Andrew Brown, and Chad Ericson. Chad, appreciate it. Thanks again, and we'll check up another edition next time.
You bet. Thanks, Andrew. Take care. We'll talk soon.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you in a bit more content on Rockfin and beyond here on the iBaseball Network.